Most of us have heard about biological age. It is a scientific concept that measures how well or badly your body is functioning relative to your chronological age. For example, you may be 60 years old, but you've eaten well, exercised, drunk plenty of clean water, minimized stress, and so on. Your body might be functioning as well as someone 20 years younger than you as a result of your self-care. We've also heard stories about 30-year-olds who have lived too hard and recklessly, leaving themselves with bodies and hearts that bear extra decades' worth of scars. Emotional age is a similar concept to biological age, but rather than predicting how young or old our physical bodies are, emotional age helps us understand how empowered or disempowered we are emotionally. It helps explain how we've been communicating, compromising, socializing, and interacting with others. For example, we've all seen those 60-plus-year-old persons who, regardless of their chronological age, behave like angry teenagers when they're upset, yelling, screaming, slamming doors, and stonewalling. Conversely, we've also witnessed the young 20-something-year-olds who carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, acting way too mature for their age, silently burdening not only their own worries and fears, but taking on those of their loved ones as well. We've also seen the older guys with young trophy wives, and immediately we know these men are father figures, in a parental role, while the young women are operating as children, in the daughter archetype. In other words, we all innately recognize when people are acting outside of their emotional age. We've just never given it a name until now. Emotional age is different from being an old soul or a young soul. It has little to do with intelligence quotient, emotional intelligence, or economic or social status, and it has everything to do with the way we act and react to life. The more empowered our emotional age, the better our lives will be. The purpose of this audiobook is to be a shortcut for the reader, a condensed, ready-to-use life stratagem or practical psychology based on emotional age. It offers a communication style, scale, and strategy called the empowerment spectrum that will provide listeners with an edge or an advantage in all their relationships. The empowerment spectrum. The empowerment spectrum outlines the concept of our identities being formed by a combination of three dominant emotional archetypes: the child, the parent, the adult. Within these three archetypes, we communicate on a scale from passive, disempowered, to peaceful, empowered. For years leading up to writing this book, I'd half-jokingly refer to these three dominant emotional archetypes as my mother energy, daughter energy, and woman energy. The interesting thing was how everyone seemed to understand what I meant when I used these terms. They seemed universal, as if everyone had these same three personas that ran their lives too. The parent archetype is the selfless part of us that gives, protects, and serves. It is the archetype that drives us to sacrifice our own needs for the needs of others. The child archetype is the selfish part of us that wants, takes, and desires. Fearful and gripping, this archetype drives us to take care of our own needs before the needs of others. The adult archetype is the integration and transcendence of the noblest qualities of each of these two archetypes into the fully empowered self. This is the archetype that balances the self in a way that expands outward without losing connectedness inward. Without realizing it, our behavior is usually dictated by one of these three dominant archetypes, depending upon the person we're dealing with. Often one of these archetypes will dominate most aspects of our life. Eric Berne, founder of transactional analysis, talked extensively about people having a life script that they begin to mentally write from a very young age. In What Do You Say After You Say Hello, he states, "Each person decides in early childhood how he will live and how he will die, and that plan, which he carries in his head wherever he goes, is called a script. His trivial behavior may be decided by reason, but his important decisions are already made." By the time you were 5 years old,